Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Morris. I am the Director of Business Development for Gaming for GTS Distribution. Welcome to another one of our publisher to retailer webinars. I'm really excited today. We have Nathan Hatfield, who is the Chief Sales Officer for Gamelyn Games. If you're not familiar with Gamelyn Games, we have a lot of tiny and a lot of epic and a lot of big things to go over today. So there's going to be some really cool stuff that we're going to be talking about. And apparently it's so important, people are already calling Nathan. So, as you can see, Nathan is in his warehouse or in his office doing some stuff. So we'll give him a second to get started on that. But we're going to go over two different games today specifically, but also be going over the brand of Gamelyn as well. The two specific games, so that everyone is aware, are going to be Tiny Epic Zombies, which is part of the Tiny Epic series. It's one of the newer ones. And then Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, which is by no means tiny, but it is quite epic. And it is a brand new game that is releasing, and we're going to go over the expansion as well called Pestilence as well. There's a lot to that, and there's a lot to the brand as well. Just as a reminder for everyone who is joining here live, just for joining live, you will be eligible to get a free copy of Tiny Epic Zombies from GTS Distribution. There's nothing for you to need to do on that. We will, at the end of the webinar, we'll get all that information over to your sales rep. They'll make sure to take care of all that and contact you to get that copy sent out to you for your store. Tiny Epic Zombies, and actually Tiny Epic Anything, is a really good game to have on a demo table. It is a very eye-catching kind of thing. And of course, zombies, that kind of, is a very approachable thing, especially with the popularity of The Walking Dead and things like that. So if you had zombies on a table at your store, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people paying attention to that from all different avenues. So it's really good stuff. In addition, though, if you purchase Tiny Epic Zombies or you pre-order Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea or Pestilence between now and next week, so today is April 1st, next week will be April 8th, you'll get 52% off MSRP as well, which is a really good deal and a great opportunity to get some more margin and stock up for some games that will do very well in your store. Outside of that, just for some quick housekeeping stuff, if anyone would like to ask questions, you can hover over your video window, and at the bottom there is a little chat bubble. If you open the chat bubble, there is a thing that'll say Zoom webinar chat. You want to make sure that the to box says all panelists and attendees. It should default to all panelists, but if you go ahead and click all panelists and attendees, when you type in your question, everyone will be able to see that. Like I mentioned earlier, Nathan, you don't have to worry about monitoring that. I'll monitor the chat window, and as questions come up, I'll pop in and let you know. But outside of that, as I tell everyone, everything is on the table. So any kind of questions you want to ask, feel free to let us know. Nathan, with that, I will shut up and let you get started and get talking about all the tiny, epic, and big, awesome stuff you have to share.
Well, thank you, Scott, and also thank you, everyone, for joining us here this morning or this afternoon where you're located. And so really just kind of want to start and, maybe familiarize yourself a little bit with Gamelyn Games, what Tiny Epic is. You may have heard of Tiny Epic. You may have people coming in your store asking for Tiny Epic. And Tiny Epic is, a series of games that Gamelyn has been making, but they're all very different from each other. So as Scott was saying, Tiny Epic Zombies is kind of one of the newest ones to come out in the line. And it's going to offer a lot of large gameplay kind of packed inside this small box. And so you can see the box sizes of Tiny Epic here. This is Zombies particularly. But Gamelyn Games, we kind of come from a background a little bit of video games. We want more fun faster. We don't want long tutorials, long rule books. We want to be able to get in, immediately start playing the games and kind of hit the ground running. And that's really what Tiny Epic Games are doing. And so particularly with Tiny Epic Zombies here, I'm going to do a screen share for you. And so particularly here on Zombies, I'm just going to kind of give you an idea. Something that makes Tiny Epic Zombies kind of stand out a little bit is item meeples. And this is something actually just in general Gamelyn Games has started further developing these item meeples. And essentially in games, generally you'll be like, oh, I just got my axe. Cool, I'm going to place my card in front of my character, which now indicates that he has the axe. However, you can see just off this graphic that we've actually created items that clip and attach right into your meeples. So now you no longer have to pretend that you're carrying a chainsaw going around this Echo Ridge Mall destroying these zombies. Kind of on a high level, we highlight something we want to do and that we always do with Tiny Epic Games is we want to make sure there's as much replayability and also as much entry to any style of gamer. So all Tiny Epic Games actually play solo. Many of them have different types of ways to play the game, and we don't even consider them necessarily variants. They are, true modes of the game. And so Tiny Epic Zombies really focuses on that with these 5 different play modes. And so the main game is played cooperatively, where you're human players trying to break out of this Echo Ridge Mall and solve these different objectives. And you're playing against a zombie AI player. However, if you want to play a competitive game, you can somebody can take control of that zombie player and be a human-controlled zombie player trying to stop the humans. And then it kind of goes on down from there. Now, the board as it's set up different and variable every time. All cards are double-sided, and that's something that you're really going to see in all Tiny Epic games, is that cards constantly have things on the other side of them. Boards are always set up variable so that you're not doing the same experience twice. And the experiences are very quick and streamlined, so you're only going to be playing for 45 minutes to an hour, and so you're going to be able to experience the game a lot, and it's going to feel very, very different each time. And with Tiny Epic Zombies, there are just tons of scenarios and objectives to play with. And these are things that people are, it's going to trigger them. They're going to feel that kind of zombie nostalgia there, where it's like, you have to call the CDC. We have to assemble an arsenal to destroy the zombies. Oh my gosh, we have to investigate a source. And a lot of what those mechanics and things that you'll be doing is it'll be a lot of pickup and delivery, going to these locations, searching them, and of course, destroying all the zombies. The art, and so this will just kind of get you an idea. So Tiny Epic games too, they're $25 MSRP. It's a very good price point for people. $25 is easy to kind of take a chance on. Maybe if you're somebody who's not familiar with the Tiny Epic series, maybe particularly zombies really catches you, and the art catches you, and you as the retailer can tell them, well, let me tell you a little bit about what's inside this game. And you can see that for a $25 price point, the amount of components, that come in this is pretty tremendous. And so you're going to be very, your people are going to be very excited in that once they pop it open and they receive it. Customers also tend to, once they discover Tiny Epic or find out what Tiny Epic is, there's kind of what, I like to call a cargo net marketing, where I just found Tiny Epic Galaxies and I really like it. And so it gets pulled up, but then they start finding the rest of the games down the line. And so, we really are finding with retailers that all the different types of brands and genre that Tiny Epic has, zombies being a popular one now, it kind of gets people's eyeballs on it. And then they can go in and really start, discovering more of the series, and they really start investing now in all of the series. So.
Nathan, can you talk a little bit about the depth of the Tiny Epic series? This is by no means your first or even third or fourth game in Tiny Epic. So I think for retailers to understand that while Tiny Epic Zombies is new, there's a massive amount of opportunity inside of that brand, right?
Yes. And so the depth, like when you're working with Tiny Epic, it really is, we're really trying to create an epic experience in this small box, but it is extremely deep. And so the strategies and such that come along with the games, there's not just zombies where you're inside the mall, kind of classic zombie killing, completing objectives. We have a game like Tiny Epic Galaxies that is drafting and dice allocation. And so there's some pressure luck elements. And so each game, has a theme. And so, people are always going to be drawn to themes initially. They're going to be like, okay, I like space games. I like Western style games. I'm really into fantasy. And so that's kind of an initial way for them to maybe decide what Tiny Epic do I like? Which one is good? And then what happens is they get the game and they open the box and they play, Tiny Epic Kingdoms, for example, a fantasy style 4X game. And they're like, wow, that was so much in that box. There was so much depth. There was so much to do there. And so it just becomes so natural to explore the next Tiny Epic game, because it's not, oh, well, I like Tiny Epic Galaxies, so I like the space version of Tiny Epic. It's nothing like that. It's that Tiny Epic Galaxies is its own game. And I like to use kind of terminology to people that Tiny Epic Galaxies and Tiny Epic Zombies are as different as Ticket to Ride is to, say, Carcassonne. They're really completely separate games, and kind of what, again, the only through line that ties them together is that Tiny Epic brand. And so people are going to know if they buy a Tiny Epic game, they're going to get a massive amount of components. They're going to get lots of different variable things to replay, and the strategy is going to be extremely deep, but you're just going to hit the ground running and start playing it. And I think that's what, a lot of gamers want, is they just want to jump in, start playing it, get going. And, Tiny Epic's really good for that. And then after, you know, a few minutes of playing or a few times they play, you know, you see layers and layers of strategies continue to be undone. And so the game, you know, doesn't leave your shelf. It doesn't disappear and get tucked away. And, you know, the portability of the game, you know, I cannot stress enough the portability of Tiny Epic. And, you know, everybody I see, I was just at Arizona Game Fair this weekend, and everybody, you know, would come up and be like, I just love Tiny Epic. I actually got Tiny Epic Galaxies and Zombies in my backpack right now, and I just take it everywhere I go. And, you know, and that's really, you know, what we want to try to accomplish. And, you know, just a side note, you know, this is a 2mm box, so it doesn't, you know, it's gonna stand up inside of your the backpack there.
Nathan, also, I know, you know, with the depth of all that and with the Tiny Epic Zombies being kind of the new game that we're focusing on with the retailers here, one of the big things that some retailers may say is, you know, it's really good to have those, you know, small games that are portable, but at times they can get lost in my shelf because there's so many of those games that are at that size. Can you talk a little bit about the display that we just recently set up in our system that you have for retailers? I don't know if you may have a picture to be able to show that.
I do, and I'd love to, Scott. And I really appreciate you bringing that up, because we are understanding too about the retailers, about how they are, you know, things can get lost. It's particular to the small games, and so, you know, and we've actually been working with our distribution partners, and so, you know, Gamelyn Games hasn't been making this inside of a box. You know, we've really been wanting to do more with it. And so I actually do have a very quick little thing here, if you guys will just bear with me for a moment. But yes, the display is going to be very crucial, the way it will help show the game off. I only had one physical one here, but then I took it to my an FL. All right, Nathan from Gamelyn. All right, here we go. This should work now. Share screen. I feel like I'm becoming an expert at this. Okay. Let's see. There we go. All right, Nathan from Gamelyn Game. Okay, here we go.
There you go.
There you go. And can you see that okay?
Yes. Well, it's actually your entire desktop. I think it's actually not just the video. There you go. Perfect.
Oh, okay. So now here we go.
No, you just had it. You just had it.
There we go.
All right. Nathan from Gamelyn Games here. Hope everyone's doing well. I just wanted to show off the new Tiny Epic display that we're creating. That's going to really help incentivize retail stores pick up more units of Tiny Epic and sell more units of Tiny Epic. You'll see it features is going to hold 6 Tiny Epic titles. So your retailers are going to be able to pick 6 units and be able to stock them in here. You'll see this flap up at the top. It'll come in and out. Get shipped with it. They will have to build this.
Yeah, and so something, so you can see it holds 6 Tiny Epic games.
Also a big gameplay experience. And what we've also done is you'll notice on the side, just to help
highlighting, you know, that the games are all different.
Each game will play separately. And behind each game, as a customer pulls it out, there's going to be a nice little
some little
information there that kind of, again,
reinforce, you know, hey, Tiny Epic's less expensive than a date night.
Cut above the rest. Your grandmother will be proud. Meet the Winner family. It's what's inside that counts. And don't put me back.
Yeah.
So hopefully this will capture the imagination of some of the buyers. It'll help them understand exactly what Tiny Epic is trying to do.
Yes. And so hopefully they're that.
All right. All right. Nathan from Gamelyn Games.
There we go. Yeah. So hopefully that kind of gave you a little bit of an idea of what that was. And, you know, that's something that's coming out really quick. So I appreciate everyone bearing with me and getting a chance to show that, because, you know, in working with distributors and talking to retailer stores, you know, we are understanding that tiny games are kind of getting lost on the shelves, you know, because they're big box, you know, baddies kind of overlook them, you know, but, you know, we do have a philosophy, you know, of Tiny Epic that, you know, it's really, you know, it's an economical decision for a customer, but it's also an ecological decision for a customer. You know, we're not wasting space. We're not trying to use extra inserts. We're not inflating the size of the box. You know, we really are trying to provide that best value. And the games, you know, fit in, they go in and out quick. You know, we're trying to use graphics that really reinforce, you know, what Tiny Epic is. You know, it is a perfect date night game. You know, it is a, you know, a perfect way to, you know, spend your $25 that you got, you know, because it's going to be a lot of game. You're going to learn a lot from it. And I think you as a retailer too, it'll be nice to see what part of it, like, okay, I always put this particular Tiny Epic game in this section, and that one's always gone, so it's going to help you maybe understand what ones are selling better, in your stores.
Yeah, and just to clarify, there was a question in chat. Chris Cobb had asked about the back catalog of Tiny Epic games being more readily available. We do a lot of the Tiny Epic games will come in and go out pretty quickly from our stocks and our restocks with Gamelyn. For the most part, Gamelyn actually does a really good job of not being out of stock of the games and having them as available. Even though some of the shelves behind Nathan look blank and bare, that is not his actual warehouse. So don't worry about that.
Yeah. These are actually all the great games that I send out to reviewers and demos and such like that.
Yeah. But yeah, if you are a retailer and you don't see a specific Tiny Epic game that you want, let your sales rep know. Shoot us an email or send us call your sales rep. We can make sure that they get stocked in your warehouse. A lot of the warehouses that GTS uses between the hub and the spoke model, sometimes some of the spokes can be out of stock, but a hub can be in stock. So if you don't see it in yours, you can definitely check one of the hub ones, which are Washington, St. Louis, and Jacksonville. But again, if there's anything in your particular area that you're not seeing, get a hold of us, let us know. We'll make sure we get that taken care of for you, because like I said, it's usually not a problem at all with Gamelyn to be able to restock regularly. And we do, just so everybody knows, we do send regular POs to Nathan and Michael at Gamelyn on a regular basis for all the products. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. And too, Scott, I can kind of just see the chat bubble there too, and I see Stephen Buck there. So the display from Gamelyn will come as a flat product.
Yeah, so it's not it's not packaged with other games. It's
correct.
A separate item on its own. I think the main driver for that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, is just that it wasn't a case of wanting to force retailers to have to buy certain Tiny Epic titles. It was the option of whatever Tiny Epic titles may be successful for them or they may be stocking, they could use inside of that display case, right?
Correct. It really is. Yeah, it's not to promote a particular title or promote. It's really kind of a lot what you said is with the display there now. Now the Tiny Epic games can be put next to something larger. Not necessarily just tucked on the small box size, and people can grab them. They're going to be more incentivized to grab it. And once you pick up a Tiny Epic game, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, wow, okay. Once you actually pick it up, and so it'll kind of incentivize. But yeah, it's just for your existing stock, and so. You're going to want to keep it full. It looks nice, but it's going to be to, the games that sell well in your store or games that you want to promote in your store. And two, though, it is going to create buzz around the new titles because people are going to come through and see the display, and then they're going to come through and see it again. And if there's a different game on it, they're going to recognize that.
Cool. Awesome. There were a couple of questions specifically, which I put my email in just so if anyone does have any additional follow-up stuff with information you can send me, we'll make sure to get things taken care of for you as well. So
that's
awesome.
Great.
There's no specific questions about zombies itself. So if you want, Nathan, you can kind of shift over to Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea and talk about like what I like to say is the opposite end of the spectrum from Tiny Epic to physically big epic. So.
Right. And so, Tiny Epic is an oxymoron, right? Jumbo shrimp, it's oxymoronic, and it's really funny that, Gamelyn Games being known most notably for our small box Tiny Epic series, we've kind of, taken what we've learned and, and we want to, Tiny Epic kind of puts us in some design constraints, as you can imagine, of what we could do with a game, but we love satisfying gamers and we love supplying really, really huge experiences. And so that's why now we have released Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, and you can see it. And I'm 6'5", 280, so this is a really large box. But this is just essentially the base game of Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, and you can see it is a very, very large box. Looks real nice on the shelf. Looks real good as you feel very good when you carry it inside of a game store. But this game particularly, it had what I would consider kind of a small retail release about a year and a half ago when we first released the game. But the game has just steadily gained popularity over this last year. A lot of reviews, a lot of positive feedback has really came in. And so we essentially went back to the drawing board with it, and we created a whole new expansion for the game called Pestilence. And this is the new one that we're going to be releasing, out in the wild next month. And again, same size box, you get that huge box. But if you're not familiar with Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, and I'm going to do a screen share here real quick while I kind of help describe and explain what, makes this important here. It's just the big green button, Nate. Just the big green button. Okay.
There you go.
Perfect. Okay, so this is just a mock-up, and so what you're actually looking at is the full 7-player version of Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. So Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, the base game, you essentially get a map that has the 4 continents on it, and then you can get an Order and Chaos expansion that adds 5th and 6th. But then what Pestilence has actually done is we've actually went and took the game to 7 full players. And this is something Pestilence really kind of uniquely brings to the table, is you can actually see right here, there's actually a floating continent that is going to go on top of this board. So something we've really tried to master with Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea is the table presence of this game, is what this game looks like when it's out playing it. People, when they sit down to play this game, you invite your friends over and you have Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea all set up, and you invite your friends over and they come in. It's just, wow, there's a lot here, and you see all the vibrant colors, all the minis are color specific. There's lots of 3D constructs. But what really makes this game special is it has the spirit, we like to call the spirit of Tiny Epic. We've taken a large scale game, as big as we can get it, and we've created streamlined concepts to keep it that feel of Tiny Epic. The Gamelyn way of more fun, faster. It's a big sprawling 4X, expand, explore, exploit, exterminate. But we've really took a concerted effort to cut down on the game time. Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea is not a 4X, a traditional 4X. Think of something like Twilight Imperium, where the first 3 hours of the game is building up, getting the engine going, and then you can kind of move out. Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea kind of cuts all that out, and you hit the ground running. And so you start with some resources. You start with some warriors. You're capable to immediately go out on this board and start attacking your opponents and killing their resource lines. Holding your advantages, but you have to kind of do that very quickly. And with Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, there's something, and we do this a lot in actually Tiny Epic games, and this is something that we found helps with downtime, is there's a follow mechanic. And so in this game, you're constantly engaged in what each player is actually doing, because you want to be able to make sure that you can take and maximize as many actions as you possibly can.
Yeah, one of the things I'd mentioned earlier at the beginning is that we had played Land, Air, and Sea. We actually played a 3-player version of it this weekend, and it only took us about 90 minutes, which was amazing. When you think about a 4X game from a consumer standpoint, you usually think about like 3, 4, 5, hours of time. It's an event more than sometimes a board game, right?
Right. It's we only can do it one Saturday every quarter.
Right. Yeah, which is pretty common. But this is a game that when we got finished, one of the guys that was playing with me, he goes, you know what? This is a repeatable 4X game. Like, this isn't a 4X game where you're done and you don't ever want to play it again because just like you said, it's going to take 3 months to get everybody together. This is a game that you can play in the course of an evening and kind of scratch that itch of every single bit of a 4X game. And the follow mechanic is really cool. You hit the nail on the head in terms of being engaged and constantly paying attention. There's nothing worse to me personally than playing a game and then playing on your iPhone for 10 minutes, waiting for someone else to take their turn and finish up, and it doesn't really matter what they do and you're not paying attention to it. And this does a great job of keeping everybody off their phones and actually engaged on the table, which is awesome.
Yeah. It is, and we always joke, those big 4X games, they should come with kind of 6 small micro games that you play in between every player's turn.
Maybe that's your next thing, is a giant game with a Tiny Epic game in between each turn.
Oh, Scott, we're turning on that.
We'll trademark it. We'll make it happen.
Yes, sir. But no, like you were saying, it really does focus on that, 30 minutes a player, kind of where you scratch that itch. But it's classic, the classic tale of orcs versus humans, dwarves versus elves, warring kingdoms. I have my continent, and there becomes this narrative at the end of every game where you're like, oh my gosh, I remember when the elves came down and destroyed that dwarven tower. But then, the orcs were on the other side of the board battling the elves. I mean, it's, that creates these narratives. And then with all the expansion content and, now with this release of Pestilence that's coming up, it'll be the first time that all of the content for Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea is actually going to be available. People are actually going to be able to go in and actually get all of the content and create a 7-player game if they wanted to. But again, the game scales down very, very well. And so even at a 7-player, that's when maybe it is something similar to what you'd maybe see as an event, but you're still only going to be at a 4-hour playtime. And so it's super streamlined, and we're just super excited about it.
And Nathan, can you talk a little bit? I know you mentioned about Pestilence adding a 7th player. Is there additional mechanics, different things? I'm presuming with the name Pestilence, it adds something obviously much more, epic or dramatic.
Yes. And so kind of and really and also too, what's nice about all the expansions is you get more factions too. So you're not just getting more to do, you're getting more factions to choose from. And the factions in this game is really what it's all about. Each faction has its own character board, and its character board, you're going to have essentially a tech tree where you're upgrading and building your abilities, trying to synergize as much as you can. And so again, another area of replayability that comes in this game is that each faction is so different that you really want to play each faction. Even if you're always like to be humans, you're going to want to stray out because you're really going to want to try what those other factions do. And with a name like Pestilence, we've actually introduced the bird folk and the merfolk to the game. And so kind of the Pestilence name kind of comes behind that because, birds and fish, tend to be bringers of disease. And so that's something that kind of spawned that name. But Pestilence, it really is about the floating continent that you get up inside there. I know I have a little bit of glare, but it really is about that floating continent because now that's a new area that can be visited. So it introduces 2 new mechanics in the game that are called fly and submerge. And so there's going to be some new keywords. There's going to be some new ways to get around the map. And it introduces a lot of spells. And so something that's cool about Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea is there's a spell mechanism where there's a spell deck, and you're able to get spells, cast spells, but they can be combat oriented spells. They can be instant or interrupt spells where you can affect people off turn. You can use them in combat. And so there's a lot of trickery inside your hand where it's not just I'm building the biggest army to come and smash you. There's some elegance and kind of some art to it. Where the combat system is not dice. You're not chucking dice. You're not, I rolled 2 6s, so I won. There's a tactics-based deck, and each player has all the same tactics cards. And so you are always beating your opponent, with your skill, with your gameplay, with your wit. And so all of the wars or all of the decisions that end up getting made in the game are really, really extremely satisfying, and you really feel that you executed your strategy. It didn't fall into place with you or nothing like that.
Awesome. There is a question that just came in. I just saw it came in on the Q&A and not on the chat bubble. But Carrie had just noticed that there's some Tiny Epic lines that are listed at $30 MSRP instead of $25 on the website. So we'll make sure we get that updated and corrected today because they are all $25. There's none that are $30. Yes, sir.
Yep, and that's a important part again to Gamelyn Games is maintaining a $25 price point. It's a great place for consumers. It's a great place for retailers, and there certainly is not going to be any other game on your shelf for $25 that's going to have what a Tiny Epic game is going to have.
Awesome. Now, Nathan, if people have questions, there's no additional questions that are coming in on the chat or the Q&A right now. But if people have questions and they want to reach out to you directly at Gamelyn, what's the best way for them to find you, both directly and if they want to find you online for like social media and things like that?
Yeah, certainly. And I'm very involved on social media. All of us Facebook peeps here. So let me actually just put my email into the chat window.
And we can make sure to have everybody have this on the video too. That way we can make sure people can get a hold of you easily as
Wonderful.
well.
And again, I'm okay putting my cell phone number there as well. I'd like to be contacted. And then.
Perfect. And for anyone who doesn't have the chat window open, it's just nathan@gamelyngames.com.
Yep. And that's NATHAN.
Yep. Perfect.
Yep. And then I do manage the Facebook, a lot of the Facebook messages as well. So facebook.com/GamelynGames. I did GamelynGames.com, but our Facebook, we're extremely active on Facebook. Social media is a big part of, what Tiny Epic is. You know what I mean? And so we really like to promote, we like to be interactive. We want to see your pictures. We want to hear from you. We want to know how to, make sure that you can sell games better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. The one final thing, and I'll bring it up just because I know we had talked about it in the past couple of times, was around being part of our demo program.
Yeah.
The Tiny Epic Zombies, of course, is available to everyone who's joining today as a demo. You get the 52% off, of course, if you purchase or pre-order the games between now and next week as well. But if there are other Tiny Epic games that you're interested in getting in demo, definitely get a hold of us. Let us know at GTS. We'll be happy to help you out with that and work with Gamelyn to make sure that you guys can get demo copies of the games. Transparently, and don't hit me in the head for this, Nathan, but transparently, Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea may not be the best game for a demo table because it's so physically big, but it is a great opportunity to get the Tiny Epic games in, be able to then build off of that with your consumers. You know, as people are buying, like Nathan said, you know, they'll buy Tiny Epic Western, then they'll come back and they'll look for something else that kind of scratches a different itch, maybe with a different genre like Galaxies or Zombies or Kingdoms or Defenders. There's so many different options in there. I mean, pretty much whatever genre you like, there's some type of Tiny Epic game around that, which is really cool.
There
and
is.
then build them up from there, obviously, to Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. And alternatively, you can go the other direction in that if you have consumers in your stores that like that Twilight Imperium experience, that like that big 4X Exodus style kind of gameplay, then they're looking for something that they can play in a shorter amount of time frame where they don't have to sit down for a weekend. Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea is a great opportunity to position with them and then immediately transition that to, if you like the gameplay, there's also a smaller series as well that packs just as much punch from a decision-making process and a game perspective, but does it in a much smaller box and a much smaller price point as well. So kind of runs the gamut across the entire board, so to speak.
It does. They really do feed into each other well, because people do start understanding, you know, like, okay, I'm seeing how Gamelyn's making games. I'm getting it. And it is different, you know, than other people are making games. You know, we are, you know, I keep using the term more fun, faster. We are so hyper-focused on that. And so we've just created these streamlined things. And again, quality, I can't speak enough about the quality of the components in the games. You know, Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, you know, many of those big games have lots and lots of little teeny pieces and chits and you know, and minis made out of just PVC with no ABS and none of the good plastics. But everything in Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea is just top of the line product quality. So.
Awesome. Cool. Well, like I said, there's no additional questions that are coming in. So with that, we can actually cut loose, let some of the retailers go, and get back to being retailers for the day. Nathan, definitely want to thank you very much for taking the time to join us and kind
of my pleasure
about the Gamelyn brand and about the Tiny Epic and the Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea brands, which are two very strong, very different, but very, you know, similar type brands as well, which is great.
They are, yes, and that, yep, they're a little different, but they are similar. It's Heroes is just the, you know, just the big brother, but it's we're just great. And you know, and I don't mind if people say this, and you know, because Tom Vassell said this, not me. Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea captures what Warcraft 3 did for computer players. It will do that for a board game player. It has captured what an RTS real-time strategy experience can be in a board game.
That's awesome. That's a great line to end with. That's great. Retailers, thank you again so much, as always. As a reminder, if you're here live, you'll be eligible to get a free copy of Tiny Epic Zombies. We'll make sure to get the information over to the sales reps. If you're watching this recorded, thank you for watching and joining us. Please feel free to obviously ask any questions you have in the comments that are recorded below. We'll make sure, Nathan, again, to have the information up there so that people will be able to get a hold of you as well if they have any questions separately outside of this. But please, retailers, as always, we know how busy it is and how crazy it is, but we definitely appreciate you taking the time out to join us and learn more about this.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yep. If anyone does have any questions for me directly, you can always feel free to shoot us a note here at GTS. My email is just smorris, MORRIS, @gtsdistribution.com. With that, though, well, thank you very much. We'll let you get back to being retailers and have a wonderful week in your stores. Thanks so much.